Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better.
People say Ted Bundy didn't show any emotion. There must be something in there. I showed emotion. You know what people said? See, you really can get violent and angry.
Welcome to the Squonk The Hag, a podcast about murder, mystery, the supernatural, and even a conspiracy or two.
Dun, dun, dun.
My name is Mo.
And I'm Kraken.
Welcome in, guys, and I hope you're ready, because
It's that time again.
it's a Krakow tale.
And today's Krakow tale is a very interesting one.
I know you said there's a twist and like a surprise ending.
Yeah, there's an ending that...
There's an ending. just stop there.
Oh, it definitely has an end. It's if you haven't heard this story before, it's one that you might not really be expecting.
I saw the name because we have our calendar and all that stuff, but I have never heard the story. The name does not look familiar, so I'm a little scared.
Fine, it's fine. But I will say this one, I need to include a trigger warning at the beginning of this one. There is discussions of child abuse in this one, so if that is something that is a no-no, maybe you want to go back to another one or just wait for the next one, because unfortunately that's kind of how this one goes.
I don't know how people will feel about the next one either, because I don't know, I think I told you this, but I had like 3 stories to research, and I was like, okay, I don't know which one to do, and I wasn't really particularly drawn to any of them. Like, all of them I was excited about. I was like, okay, these are all good. So I rolled a dice, and it was like 1, 2 gets this story, 3, 4 gets that story, 5, 6 gets this story, and the next one's a cannibal. So
it just goes downhill. Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that people don't tune into a podcast like this expecting happy things.
No, but some are worse than others, I would say, because I mean, Mothman is just creepy story. Then you have things that actually, well, technically Mothman sightings actually happen supposedly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but then there's stuff that is of a more sensitive nature.
There's evidence of that we can say this did happen. So this is the story of Gary Plauché. His name actually is Leon Gary Plauché, but he's always gone by Gary. He was born on November 10th, 1945 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This is just what you would think of whenever you think of a suburban dad, you know, with the white Reeboks on and the khaki shorts with the the white socks going up to the knee out on the grill.
The New Balance shoes, they're slightly green.
New Balance, that's it, not Reebok. That is basically Gary. He served in the Air Force for a short time, and he was even promoted to staff sergeant. Later on, he would leave the Army and work as a cameraman for a local news station, and he also did some work as a salesman for selling also camera equipment.
Computers, cameras, it's all the same.
Computers, it's technology. It's the crunchy chips. It's fine.
Did the crunchy chips?
Computer chips, and technically they are crunchy. I'm not wrong. You know, if you break one, they make a crunch, and they're called computer chips. It's fine. I wouldn't worry about it. He was an equipment salesman. It's fine.
Okay.
Moving on. And we're gonna begin our story with as most, well, I would say unsolved mysteries, but this is not unsolved. Things were normal until they weren't. Gary was just an average dad living his life with his white New Balance shoes out on the grill,
Making sure no one touches the thermostat.
basically. Yes, doing dad stuff.
Have you ever seen the meme where a dad got a tattoo of a thermos on his arm?
My God, I've seen that one. Yes.
Yeah, and he's like, no, don't touch the thermostat.
Why is that something that Chris would do? I can see the pun tattoos being a thing with him.
I mean, he would never get a tattoo. I keep thinking of getting another one, but I just haven't.
You could get one of like the Squonk The Hag logo.
I could do that, and I also thought about the kitties.
That too, yeah. Do you have enough room for a Bubba tattoo? That's like a whole back piece right there.
If I got a life-size Bubba tattoo, it would be an entire back piece.
I mean, I don't see anything wrong with this.
And that's only if he's like curled up or loafing.
You could have him like curled up and he's like holding a chalupa from Taco Bell.
Well, we had Taco Tuesday this week. Chris had leftover tacos for lunch today, and Bubba sat there on the bench in the kitchen and just stared him down the whole time.
I mean, his thought process was most likely, if I stare long enough, I'll get something.
Unfortunately, he did not.
And there's our first tangent on tacos.
I mean, if you're gonna have a tangent, it should be about tacos.
This is fair. But talking about Gary and his life before everything happened, there's not really much there from what I can find, just because didn't really do much besides being in the Air Force and getting promoted to staff sergeant. And then after leaving the Army, he was just a normal dad. He's just some guy in Louisiana.
A dude. He
had a wife, and her name was June, and together they had 4 children. Everything kind of started getting bad. This is where we get into the I guess the meat of the story. On February 19th, 1984, we have another person to talk about, a man named Jeffrey Doucette. And again, not much is known about Jeff, because other than that he was born in Port Arthur, Texas in 1959, and by his own admission, he was also sexually abused as a child. That's about all that's known about him, because as we see later on, there wasn't much opportunity to learn much about him. But Jeff would eventually go on to carry out this same kind of abuse that he had to endure as a child, and things escalated to a point where Jeff even said that he couldn't remember the number of his victims. So,
oh my God. I know what's really sad is the cycle of abuse, and it's various types of abuse too, not just this kind. But a lot of times, if you don't get help and have a solid support system, if you're a victim of abuse, usually you become an abuser, or you just keep getting yourself into relationships and situations where you become a victim. And it's really, really sad. And to hear it go to this level where he couldn't even remember the number of victims is just, I think it's a tragedy. And it's upsetting.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems, like you said, unless you have a good support system to get through that and all. Jeff didn't have that, because he eventually would move to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where he became a karate instructor. Now, he had no friends, no family. It was just him. He was on his own, and he was having such a hard time. He became a karate instructor there, and he was having such a hard time that he was living in the karate studio.
Oh my God.
That was his home as well as his work.
I mean, at least he had a roof over his head.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's something. I couldn't find anything about like what the living area looked like in there. So I don't know if he just kind of like slept on the floor in the corner, or if he actually had like a little studio apartment in the back, or I couldn't figure out how that worked. But somehow he was living in there. I don't know how showers were a thing, but somehow he was making it work. And he was just 24 when he moved down there and was living in the karate studio. This was around 1983, and this is at the same time he met Gary's son, Jody. So like all of his students at the karate studio loved him, because like he would take them on trips. It wasn't just go and do your lessons and then come back home. Like they went on like camping trips, they went to the roller skating rink, they did movies, all kinds of stuff with his students. So to some of them, especially Jody, he was kind of like a father figure in a sense, because he spent a lot they spent a lot of time together on these trips and stuff, because around this time Gary and June had a divorce. So Jody and his brother Mikey began to look up to Jeff and kind of see him as like I said, like a father figure. So because he was the one taking him on all these trips and doing all this stuff with him. And during all of this, Jeff would become good friends with Gary. There's even an interview, I can't remember which documentary this was from, but they interviewed the family and everything. And Jody said Gary at one point broke down and started crying, and he was like, what's wrong? And Gary would say, I just feel so bad for him. He's got nobody. He's just living in this karate studio. So Gary invited Jeff over to his place and gave him a shower and invited him to a family dinner.
Oh, wow.
So Jeff became like a close family friend.
That's crazy. And I hate that I think of this, but I know you were saying how he would take the kids on trips and they would go on camping trips and things like that. And a lot of times predators like that will do those sorts of things. And it's sad because there are people who aren't predators that do kind things like that. So it's really hard to tell, which is probably why they continue to do this. But, you know, they do that to get the kids' trust, get them to really like their company, to form this bond leading up to the types of abuse that they conduct. And it's, like I said, it's awful. But
it is, but surprisingly, I couldn't find anything else about his time in Louisiana other than this incident. So I don't know if he was not doing anything, you know, to any of the other students or it was just so happened that started up when he met Jody, or if no one ever came forward with other accusations against him in this area. But so, I mean, who knows? I mean, it's possible, but
yeah, because something like this, there's a lot of people who don't come forward because they're scared or embarrassed. And
yeah,
it's unfortunately something that even though it's better today and people are more open about it, still a lot of people have been through horrible situations like this without coming forward.
Yeah, I didn't include this one in the document that I wrote up, but basically there was an instance where Jeff was dropping Jody off at his uncle's place after one of their trips. This will show like how close Gary and Jeff were. Supposedly the uncle witnessed. Jeff didn't realize that the uncle was watching. I think he was dropping them off and the uncle was inside watching through the window, you know, to make sure they got in and everything. And Jeff didn't know that. And Jody's uncle witnessed Jeff giving Jody a kiss on the mouth.
Oh.
Being upset about this, he didn't immediately confront Jeff. Instead, he's like, I'm calling Gary and letting him know what's going on.
Yeah.
Gary's response was, there's no way Jeff would do anything like that. You've got to be mistaken. I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. I don't think you saw what you think you saw. There's no way Jeff would do that. He didn't believe it.
It's hard to believe something like that too. It's just,
yeah, especially if you're as close with him as Gary was with him.
Yeah, you just don't want to, and a lot of times if you don't want to believe something, you just won't.
Yeah.
So that's awful.
But as I said, Jeff began spending a lot more time with Jody and the Plauchés because they were all really good friends and everything. Around March 1983 is when Jeff began inappropriately touching Jody as well as sleeping with him during karate trips. And this would eventually escalate to rape. According to Jody, after this occurred, Jeff would sexually assault him almost every day, sometimes twice a day over the course of the following months.
Oh my God. And how old was Jody at the time? Like,
Jody was 11 when all of this was going on. So, like, I'm assuming it took place, you know, this all from when this started to when this ended and everything. He was about 10, 11, somewhere in that range. So
that's horrible.
But it really escalated even further on February 19th, 1984. Jeff was actually about to go on trial for using some bad checks when he decided to stop by the Plauchés' home, and he told Gary's wife, June, that he was picking Jody up and they were going to go run an errand and they would be back in about 15 minutes. But that's not exactly what happened. Of course, June had no reason not to trust Jeff because they had no clue what was going on. They never came home that night.
So 15 minutes turned into what, kidnapping?
Pretty much, yeah, because that night, Jeff and Jody were on a bus headed to California.
Oh my God.
And along the way, Jeff had shaved his beard and dyed Jody's hair from blonde to black in an attempt to pass him off as his own son so they could hide from law enforcement better, so that way no one would look twice at those two.
What? And the kid just went along with it, or?
Yeah, he went with him because I like you said, he was probably scared and didn't know what to do or how to tell anyone. So at this point, he's in the car with the guy, and it seemed like he didn't really have a choice but to go along with it.
Oh my God.
And they actually got all the way to Anaheim, California, and they checked into a cheap motel, actually just a short distance away from Disneyland. I'm not sure exactly which hotel this was, but of course, the sexual abuse would continue until February 29th, when Jody asked Jeff if he could call home and tell everyone that he was okay and let them know what was going on. Of course, in doing this, the FBI were alerted and were tracing the call and telling the California police where he was at.
Yeah.
During the call, June asked to speak to Jeff, to talk to him, to see, how he was doing, just carry on a normal conversation like she wasn't worried or anything, just to keep him on the phone. She managed to keep him on the phone long enough that she heard a banging in the background, followed by, "This is the police, get against the wall now," before the phone was cut.
Oh my God.
So she was actually able to hear Jeff being arrested.
I can't imagine, obviously, what she was thinking and how she was feeling, but I feel like she was probably relieved and proud, and knowing that now her son was with police and safe, and that's crazy.
Yeah, and then thankfully there was no incident. They were able to get in, arrest him, and get Jody out and everything. So nothing else happened.
I wonder if this is why, like, now, on TV, they're always like, the call can't be too long because they're going to trace you and arrest you.
Probably.
I know part of that is false. Like, I do know that is greatly exaggerated and all that stuff. But obviously you do need some sort of, I guess, time or something.
Yeah, because I don't exactly know how that works, especially back then. I'm sure the technology has advanced where, they can just ping cell phone signals now. There doesn't even need to be a call.
Yeah, well, the problem nowadays is a lot of people use VoIP, the voice over internet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and like I have a cell phone carrier, but it uses my Wi-Fi to help reduce the amount of, not data, but like tower traffic. So that is technically a VoIP. Yeah. But it's not like a shady. It's not like I'm like, ooh, I don't want anybody to track me.
It's not because you're trying to hide from the police.
Exactly. But there are people that use stuff like that, and they're able to, like, even digitally, if it's some sort of either chat room or text chat or anything like that, they can use proxies and VPNs and all that stuff to avoid detection. So it's the age of technology is an interesting place.
Yeah, but apparently this was a case of, we need you to make a phone call and hold that phone call long enough for us to ping where the phone call is coming from.
Yeah.
So, but thankfully there was no incident in arresting him, and it was all fine.
That's good.
In that part, of course, everything else before then was not fine.
Yes. But
yeah, they got him, and Jody was able to return home to his family in Baton Rouge on March 1st in 1984. And around this time, his father, Gary, began hearing through news reports and stuff like that his son had been sexually assaulted by Jeff. This was the first time he was really realizing what Jeff had did. I'm guessing that he had just assumed that Jeff had just kidnapped him and that nothing else was going on, but now he's realizing what happened.
Yeah, and I wonder, because I know a lot of times with situations where something bad happened and there was some sort of warning or a warning sign. So like the uncle saying, hey, I saw this. And then in retrospect, I wonder if there was some guilt involved, because, sometimes it's like, oh my God, if I had then this never would have happened. So that, I wonder.
It could have been.
Yeah, but that's awful. It's like that, especially since he had to find out about it through like news reports. And there's no good way to ever find out something like that. There's absolutely
no, but finding out through the news and not the police being like, here's what happened.
Yeah, like
kind of thing.
Yeah, I would much rather have a detective tell me than to hear it on the 6 o'clock news.
Just overhearing it, yeah. But Gary was actually interviewed not long after. I think there's even some interviews of the family whenever they were in the airport when Jody returned home. And Gary said that he felt a sense of helplessness when he heard these reports about what happened to his son, because he was just like, there wasn't anything I could have done while those two were away before we got him back.
Just in general, that whole situation of knowing what his son went through all by himself, because, obviously the kid was scared and felt like he had no one even before the kidnapping, but then, having your child taken away from you. And so I guess Baton Rouge, it's still like, I guess, kind of eastern part of the U.S., you know what I mean? So it was like over halfway across the country. He took this, he took the kid to California. So it's like knowing that you couldn't do anything to stop any of the stuff that happened. A sense of helplessness, I think, is not exaggerated. What's the opposite? Understatement. An understatement. There you go. I'm like,
that's the word.
An unexaggeration.
A reverse exaggeration.
English is not my strong suit.
So now we're gonna get into our twist a little bit here. Gary, of course, he's glad to have his son back and everything's fine. Jeff is in custody. Everything seems to be fine, but he was still on edge and felt that he had to take justice into his own hands.
So I'm just gonna say right now, that is never a good idea.
No.
I know that the justice system is flawed and sometimes it fails.
And you don't always get the outcome you want, but...
Yeah, but you don't take justice into your own hands.
Yeah.
Like, that's just asking for trouble. And a lot of people, like, I don't know how far he goes because, I have no idea what the story... I can guess.
Oh, wait until you see where this goes.
Great. But no matter what you do when you take justice in your own hands, whether you go to extremes or, maybe not quite as bad, you're going to feel terrible because it means you have to do something terrible.
Yeah.
So good people will do horrible things in the name of quote unquote justice, which it's more in the name of revenge.
Pretty much, yeah.
But it never ends well for anybody. Whereas at least if you go the proper channels and you allow the justice system to do its thing, you won't have dirt on your hands, or in some cases blood on your hands, or gasoline or whatever you get on your hands doing the horrible things that you shouldn't be doing.
Yes.
I just realized I accidentally got really preachy there. Sorry.
I mean, you have a point. I didn't see it as preachy. I mean, you're right.
Okay. Because, like, sometimes I talk and then afterwards I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're right. Taking justice into your own hands. I mean, at that point, in the moment, you feel like you're doing what needs to be done. But then afterwards, there's the consequences afterwards. So, I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, everyone has consequences for their actions.
Yes.
And if you commit a crime against somebody because they committed a crime, that makes you a criminal too. Hey guys, it's Mo here, and I wanted to take just a second to talk to you about Anchor.fm. When Kraken and I decided to start the podcast, we had no idea what we were doing, and we went out there and searched to see what we could find to help us, because you have to not only create the audio and the podcast itself, but you also have to upload it to all the different services, and how do you do that? So we found Anchor, and it has been a godsend. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit right from your phone or your computer, so you don't even have to have fancy editing software to do it. You can also, when using Anchor, you can distribute it to all the listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. I know Stitcher's on there, Radio Public. It's amazing. And it's all in one place. If you guys followed me when I was streaming, you know that I am all about streamlining everything to a single application to do it all. And that is what Anchor does for us. Plus, big point here, Anchor's totally free. So you can either download the Anchor app from the App Store on your phone, or you can go to anchor.fm to get started. I highly suggest it, and I hope you will enjoy it if you, too, are starting your own podcast.
Yeah. And technically, now that I think about it, there's actually 2 twist endings. There's the first twist ending, and then another one after the fact that you're not expecting how this to actually end. So
Is he a figure skater doing the triple twisty turn jab?
this story feels like it.
I used to watch figure skating when I was a kid. I haven't watched in a long time, and I forgot all the words for the jumps. So now it's the
He's doing the twisty spinny thing.
It's the triple twisty jab.
Yes, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, I should be a sports commentator.
I would pay for that.
What's funny is, so like Chris and I are huge hockey fans and huge baseball fans, and I know a lot about hockey and baseball. I know a lot about the rules. I know a lot about statistics. I keep the scorecard when we go to baseball games. Chris a lot of times has to ask me about why certain calls were made on the ice and all this stuff, but I can't communicate those things.
He did a bad thing with the stick and the ball, and then he didn't run fast enough, and then he did the thing when he was supposed to do the stuff. Is that about how it goes?
That's pretty much how I explain it. But in my brain, I'm like, okay, so he got this penalty because he did this thing. But my mouth is just like, he took his stick and he did the little, like the jibber jabby, and now he's in the penalty box.
Understandable. Somewhere something goes down a wrong path, and by the time it comes out, it's a little different.
Yeah, the wires and the pneumatic tubes connecting my brain to my mouth don't function properly.
Things are hot wired, basically.
Yeah, somebody just came in and they were like, oh, let's steal this brain. And they tried to hotwire it.
Someone stole your catalytic converter.
I don't know what a catalytic converter does, but I'm assuming it's part of the vroom vroom beep beep.
Pretty much, yeah. It makes the car do the vroom vroom beep beeps. I think. I might not even be right.
So, okay, my you could tell me anything and I would believe you. My father can take an engine apart and put it back together and it will run better than it did before. I know that there's an engine in a car.
I can take an engine apart, but I won't be able to put it back together, nor will I know what I took apart or how I took it apart.
Well, I mean, I feel like anybody technically could take an engine apart. There are things called sledgehammers.
Exactly.
But
I know nothing about cars, but I could probably find a way to take one apart.
just give me a power drill and a crowbar and
We know what happens with you and power drills. Let's not.
Hey, that power drill and me are friends. It's just when my friend Beer gets in the mix that we...
Of course, blame someone else. I see how it is.
Sometimes you just have friends who are like, hey, what's up? And then you're like,
Let's just stop it right there. Sometimes you have friends that are just like, hey.
Yeah, well, it's not my fault that beer is tasty. And I don't drink often, but when I do, 1 or 2 is usually enough. And then I feel like I can use power tools. This is why I'm not allowed to have power tools other than my power drill.
Understandable. My mind just, with you, my mind just immediately goes to that scene in the movie Step Brothers where they're building the bunk beds, and it's just like, no power tools. That is not your toothbrush. No power tools.
Hey, you know what? Okay, so I have used that power drill to hang stuff on the walls, to build furniture, I redid my bathroom. It's just as long as I can't have my friend Beer over when I do that stuff.
Those two friends don't get along.
Yeah. I feel I should name my power drill so then I could be like, when Strawberry Wheat comes over, Frida and I can't hang out.
Frida the power drill. Wonderful. It's canon now. You won't put googly eyes on it.
I have googly eyes on it in my robot vacuum.
I bet you've got some stuff to make a small fake wig to put on it too.
Oh my God.
Do it. You won't.
Well, now I guess tonight after we're done recording, I'm putting googly eyes and a small fake wig on my power drill.
I anxiously await the photos.
Anyway.
Tangent over about power drills. The triple twisty jab. Here we go. So, everything seems fine. Jody's home. Jeff is in custody. But Gary's not exactly happy. So he spends the next few days at the Cotton Club. It's a local bar that he always hangs out at, and he was asking around if anyone knew when Jeff might be brought back into town for trial. Just so happens that on one night, and now you kind of see where this is going.
Yeah.
Are you good? You put some WD-40 on those door hinges? Are you good?
I can see where it's going, and it's not going somewhere good.
Because it just so happened that a former coworker from the news station where Gary had worked was there that night and told him that Jeff would be flown in at 9:08 a.m.
Oh, so he knew exact time, exact place.
Yeah, because he worked with the news because like a lot of news agencies were going to be there filming whenever Jeff was brought in to the airport. So this coworker, I don't guess, thought anything about it. That he was just like, he just wants to know when his trial is. He didn't think about what Gary might be going to do. So on March 16th at 9:08 a.m., Jeff was being escorted.
Oh, was the plane exactly on time? That's a rarity.
I know.
Especially these days.
Just so happens it was on time. Jeff was being escorted through the airport in Baton Rouge by two deputies that, again, it just so happens that the two deputies that are escorting Jeff are longtime drinking buddies with Gary, Mike Barnett and Bud Connor. But what they didn't know is that Gary was waiting for them by the payphones. And Gary had pulled a spy movie and put on a baseball cap and some dark sunglasses, and they did not recognize him. Now, this is the first time I've heard this part of the story, so I'm not 100% sure how accurate this is, but supposedly, from what I could find, he was on the phone with one of his friends by the name of Jim Adams, and Jim was just on the phone with Gary, I guess, to see what was going to happen, or, I don't know if he was in on it. I couldn't really find anything out about Jim, so supposedly their conversation went something like this. Gary says, it was just one-sided. Jim is just listening. So Gary says, I see them coming. Oh no, they took a different way out. No, they're coming. They're going to walk right past me. And since Gary was keeping his back to the news crew and he was facing the phone kind of in the little cubby, so that way it would be harder for them to recognize him, he said, when I see the light come on the camera, I'm going to shoot him.
Oh my God.
I'm pulling the gun out of my boot. You're going to hear the shot. And as Jeff passed directly in front of a cameraman, Gary turns around and shot Jeff in the head.
Oh my God. Now, was any of the, that's awful. But were any of the news cameras doing live coverage, or was this filmed?
Yes, they were filming.
They were filming, but
I think they were taping. I think.
Okay, so
I don't think it was live.
Okay, I mean, small miracles.
Yeah, because surprisingly, the footage of this incident is up on YouTube.
What?
Because the only thing in the footage, there's nothing graphic in the video at all, other than you hear the shot and there's just a commotion. But that's the only thing that's like, quote, graphic in there.
But they're not actually framed on camera on him when it happens.
No, Jeff and Gary are both in frame, and you see Gary turn around and aim his pistol up at Jeff, and he fires just as Jeff gets just off to the side of the camera. So you see Jeff fall, after you hear the shot, and then you see the deputies run over to Gary.
Oh my God.
And actually, because that's why the deputies didn't immediately draw their guns and fire at Gary, was because in their mind, I guess they knew that at that point they're like, that's Gary. He's not a threat like that. He's not gonna just shoot everyone. So they were able to actually go over and get the gun from him and pin him against the wall. And actually that's what you can hear afterwards, because the cameras are just focused on Gary at that point.
Well, and when they realized who he was, they knew exactly why he did what he did. Not that he was just there to shoot the place up. They understood, oh, crap.
Yeah, because there was actually an interview with the cameraman that filmed this too. Yeah, in the video, like I said, if anyone wants to look it up, do so at your own discretion. But like I said, there's nothing graphic in there. You just hear the shot and then the commotion and everything. There's nothing visually graphic in this, but of course what's happening is, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but visually you can't see.
You don't see the aftermath, let's put it that way.
Small miracles.
Yeah, but the deputies were able to get Gary against the wall, and you can hear them asking, Gary, why? Why, Gary? And he said, I had to do it. I had to do it. You know what he did to my son. If somebody did that to your kid, you would do it too.
I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people feel like victims' families and things like that do feel like that. And it's sad that he
Followed through.
He followed through. Yeah, that's the words
Yeah.
I was looking for.
At that point, they took Jeff into custody. Jeff, I'm getting my names confused. They took Gary into custody, and Jeff was taken to the hospital where he would fall into a coma, and he died the following day.
I'm actually a little surprised because you said he was shot in the head. I expected that he would have died pretty much then and there.
Yeah, from what I see, he went into a coma, and he didn't actually die until the next day. It's even more surprising that of how it happened. Like when you see the angle and like how Gary did it and everything, he didn't miss because he still had the phone in his left hand.
Oh, wow. And, there's so much going on, nerves and craziness. And the thing, obviously, he wouldn't have thought of this, but what if all of that, the commotion, the reporters, the noise, the nerves, the adrenaline, if he had missed and shot someone else?
Yeah, because Jeff was between him and the camera crews.
Oh my God, yeah. Like if he had been off just a couple inches, he could have killed an innocent person.
But it's like I said, that's something that's like interesting to when you can actually see the event take place, because it seems like it's so long before he actually does anything, but it's very quick when you think about it. But like he had a moment to turn around, get eyes on Jeff, and then raise the gun. Like he didn't take his time doing it, but it wasn't as quick as you would think.
Yeah.
But
when you're in situations like that, sometimes time feels like it's going faster, and sometimes time feels like it's going slower.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's just wow.
But another thing that I thought was interesting, it's not funny, but the person's response kind of is to me a little bit, because Gary's wife, June, was later interviewed after the shooting, and they were asking her what her opinion was on what Gary had done, and her only response was, the least you could have done was let me drive you.
Yeah, and you do have to, like I said, you shouldn't take justice in your own hands, because now
No.
he does have to live with the fact that he took a life, and that is not good or easy on anybody's psyche. But
Yeah.
and it doesn't, I'm not justifying this, but Jeff was a monster.
Yeah.
So yes, he shouldn't have done it, but they had such powerful feelings because he did something so horrible. So I can understand why they would have responded like this. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's good, but I can understand.
And that's the other thing, is that like Jody seems to be doing fine in the little interview that I saw. The only thing is that after his dad did that, that's all people associate him with, is what his dad did, and he kind of can't forget because they keep reminding him of that. Because I didn't know about it, but apparently he's got a YouTube channel where I don't think he's uploaded in a while, because I think I looked at it, where he's uploaded, just random videos and stuff, like home movies and stuff, of either him cooking something or whatever, and just the comments. He said instead of people commenting on what was in the video, it was just something like, your dad's a hero or something like that, or like commenting on what his dad did.
Yeah, like you can't heal if you're constantly reminded of it.
Yeah, so I kind of, in a way, it did a little more damage than he was intending to by doing this to Jeff. So for the other spinny twisty jab, I will only refer to twists as spinny twisty jabs.
Mm-hmm. Spinny twisty jab. Technical term.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Gary was actually charged with second-degree murder, but he took a plea deal where he pleaded no contest to manslaughter and was given a sentence of 7 years suspended sentence, which included 5 years of probation and 300 hours of community service. And other than the initial jail time when he was arrested, he never spent a day in prison.
I feel, yeah, maybe you're gonna say something about it, but it's I don't want to say temporary insanity, but like there are times where where they like if you're a victim in self-defense or if you're a long-term victim who turns on your captor or abuser or things like that, often you do get a much lesser sentence because it's not that you are, a horrible person who just wants to kill people. You're not a serial killer or anything, or even just, a killer. You're driven to kill, so you'll often get a lesser sentence. But that's just crazy because that was very premeditated. That wasn't a spur of the moment. Something was happening and I reacted.
He went and found out when and where he was going to be, planned to be at the payphones, thought about how he was dressed. He thought about it.
Yeah, well, he did research. He was asking multiple people when and where. What do you know? How do I get there?
And I saw a few things too this is another thing. It's like there was the uncle, there was the signs there that something was wrong, and then there was also signs that Gary was going to do this. But supposedly, let me find that name again. Mike Barnett. Apparently, he told Mike Barnett, he was like, "I'm gonna kill that SOB." Talking about Jeff.
Yeah.
So Gary had told this officer that he was going to kill him, but the officer was just like, he's going through a period of, he's upset, he's angry, of course, but I don't think, having known him for so long, he's like, I don't think he's going to do anything. So they didn't follow up on it.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before, where it is a common thing for you to be like, I'm so mad I could kill him.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't actually do it.
And I guess that's how they felt, so nothing was done. And then
when this happened.
But actually, you saying that he was kind of driven to a point of insanity, that's actually why they didn't send him to prison. It was determined that upon hearing the reports of sexual abuse, Gary was driven to a temporarily psychotic state in which he was unable to distinguish right from wrong, and that a prison sentence would do more harm than good, and that he was no longer a risk of committing another crime.
I mean, yeah, because there was a very particular this was a laser focus. It was.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can understand that assessment, but that's still crazy.
Yeah. So after all of this was over and he had his sentence and everything, he was able to go back to living his quiet life at home, and actually up until 2011, Gary actually suffered a stroke. And then he was moved to a nursing home where he had another stroke in 2014, where he passed away 1 month before his 69th birthday.
I feel like this story is going to need an unboxing video. Yeah,
it really does. There's a lot here.
my brain.
It's not the longest story, but boy, has it got a lot.
It does. And it's one of those ones where I physically feel heavy.
Yeah.
I feel it feels like Bubba's sitting on my chest.
Now that's heavy.
Yeah, but it's wow. And it's one of those hard ones because he was acting in protection and retribution of his child, which it's different. It's not like he was just like, oh, I read about this guy in a magazine, he sucks, I'm gonna kill him.
Yeah, and that's another thing too that's interesting. I know this was before airports upped their security and everything, but this man was able to bring a gun into the airport in his boot and retrieve it from his boot with a camera crew right behind him, and they didn't see it.
Well, nobody was paying attention to him.
No, he's just a guy on a payphone.
He's a dude on a payphone, and they're paying attention to their news story.
Yeah.
So
that's, like I said, this is one that's interesting to me, is just because there's not, I mean, thankfully there's not, but there's not many where there was a news crew present and were filming.
Yeah, I'm very glad that they didn't actually get the incident. The actual footage.
The graphic part of the incident.
Yes, thank you. Yes. I'm glad that isn't on the internet somewhere, because I do know that there are some cases. I don't watch them, but I know I have heard of videos where you actually can see people getting killed and stuff like that. And I don't think that should be on the internet.
No, but
that's just awful.
Unfortunately, that's the internet.
Yeah, I know.
But I guess that's why it's still on YouTube. Of course, it's got the little age restriction thing. You've got to sign in to look at it, but it's because all you really hear is the gunshot.
Yeah, and what happened, you understand what happened, but you don't actually see it happening.
Yeah, you technically don't see it happen, but there's enough there that you know what happened.
Well, as we have decided last week, it was not a good story, Krakow, but you did a good job.
Yes, there we go. I was like, wait a minute, what did we decide on? My story wasn't good? And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I remember now.
We decided on you giving me all the cookies.
No. Half at most.
No, we decided.
I will split them into thirds because I know if I mention cookies, there's a certain dragon who's gonna also go for the cookies as well.
Well, so in this household, I can specifically buy a snack and say, this is for me. Please don't eat it. And then I have approximately a day and a half to eat all of it, no matter how large it is, before. So I know you said not to eat your cookies, but I was hungry, so I ate them. So I'll replace them. And then they never get replaced, or they're replaced and then eaten immediately. So,
well, that's because they were replaced and then you didn't eat them. This is why you buy in bulk, because then you buy more than he can physically eat, and then there's some left.
Honestly, I'm beginning to wonder if even that would stop him.
I mean, there's always, testing it for science. There's nothing wrong with buying 20 pounds of cookies and saying they're all for you.
Well, honestly, and okay, he went downstairs, so he won't kill me for saying this unless he can hear me. But he made a tray of brownies, and I had half a brownie out of the whole thing.
Technically, he made the...
And they did not last. Yeah, but they only lasted 2 days. I'm like, dude, you ate an entire tray of brownies. It's an entire box of brownies. Are you okay?
And he doesn't look like the kind of guy who would just go around eating half a tray of brownies.
He doesn't. I don't know. It's not fair. I'd look at a cookie and gain weight. He will eat an entire tray of brownies, and he's still skinny. It's not fair.
As they say, sometimes it just be like that.
Sometimes it be like that. Anyway.
Anyway.
Thank you for the story, Krakow.
Yes.
It has been
a lot.
It has been a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna spend the rest of the night decompressing from that one. But
yeah, it
was good work, dude. So, and I had never heard of this one, but
I try to find the ones that's this is like I said, a lot of people bring this up, so it is kind of known, but I don't think it's super well known. But
yeah, it's not Ted Bundy that everybody knows. It's one of those more rare diamonds in the rough, I guess. But alrighty, so thank you for the story. And we will be back next week for, I already mentioned it earlier, a lovely tale of a cannibal.
Wonderful.
I mean,
it's gonna be great.
It's gonna be something.
Sure, it's gonna be all sunshine and rainbows. It'll be fine.
As always, make sure to check out our website for all the show notes, sources, and more information at thesquonkinthehag.com.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and bonk the notification bell to get alerts for new episodes and content.
All right, Krakow, you ready?
Okay, bye.